so amazing.
Lots of events and stuff in the past.
Yeah.
Bands and
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we've got quite a bit to get through. Alan was at 7:30. They got a bit upset last time when we overran. Fire evacuation machine, you'll know where to go. Out the main door, should you need to.
If it's on fire, run.
Walk at a gentle pace, so don't trip. And Gordon, you're recording to put on your public
Yeah, I hope so. I'm trying my best.
page. Wonderful, thank you. Public question time's been really quick today. Run on. Item 23, apologies for absence. There aren't any. Declarations of interest. Anyone got anything to declare?
Yeah, I'll repeat the declaration I made last time about the Scouts application. So it's an interest, but it's non-prejudicial.
Exclusion of the press and public, we've agreed to exclude them from item 20. Not necessarily exclude, but we would. We have 11:23, so item 20 we're going to exclude from.
Oh, I see.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Minutes at the last meeting, have we had a chance to look at those? I know you said to amendments.
Yes, there was a missing Gordon. One of the minutes, I will correct that.
Anything with that thing?
Has anyone got any issues with minutes? Wonderful. Grant application. So we've got the. Oh, sorry, monthly report. So it's jet lag, but I'm not playing. Has everyone had a chance to look at the monthly report? Or a chance?
Very briefly, I've been away as well.
Yes, please.
Can I just, Joe and I have been today through all of the reports in very great detail. There's no bad news. The good news is in terms of your revenue outgoings and incomings, that seems to be pretty well balanced. There are some cost heads that are a little bit overspent, some that are a little bit underspent, but you're now 1 quarter through the year, so first 3 months, and based on your current level of spend versus how much you should have spent by this time, you're about sort of, you're about 19,000 in the black. So you're okay on revenue spend. In terms of capital spend, I think at some point we have to do a little bit more work on that. Don't want to, I'm not setting any hedge on you, there's no reason to believe there's a problem with capital spend, but we just need to understand it a little bit better. And in particular, obviously, the quite large amounts of capital spend that have been coming in and going out in respect to the town project. So today, I've asked Nicola Dyer, because we have a lot of new members on the council, to come to either a scheduled meeting or we'll programme one in where she can give all members, including all the new members and the new locum, a thorough breakdown of where we are, what's gone where we are bottom line. I think that's useful for 2 reasons. One, it will up our knowledge of where we are, because a lot of things have happened over the last few months, and also it will enable Nicola to say where we're currently at in terms of contingencies, because that's quite important depending on the outcome of discussions with Baines at the moment on various things. While I mentioned Baines, can I, as town clerk, make a thank you to Sean for opening the door with Simon de Beer at Baines Council, and hopefully that will bear some fruit.
Have you spoken to Nicky today?
Only swap the emails.
Okay.
So I don't have a latest position on that at the moment.
Okay. That's all.
Yeah, sure.
I also think that Simon, he's quite prone with Simon, isn't he?
He is, but he's not too involved in this aspect of the planning process.
No.
And this is the issue.
Yeah.
And there will be something coming back to the town council which we might have to look at very quickly.
Yes. Yeah, well, I have said to well, Nicola and I both agreed that the moment she feels that a decision is needed, regardless of what it is, I will be on the phone to Gordon and ask him for a council meeting to convene. So it is likely that we'll end up having a council meeting in August at some point, and probably sooner rather than later. But we're not there yet.
I think that's helpful actually, splitting out the finances and then getting the stance on by the town hall.
Yeah.
So,
Maxi might be March.
just going back to the issue we're talking about, which is the so I think we still haven't established what, looking at 4203 grants, we still haven't established exactly what the outstanding balance is on the grants, the availability in the grant funds. We've got 11,622, but I think it actually is around lower than that. I think it's around about 7,2.
It's 7,378.
7378 is what's left.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, 7378 currently.
Okay. The budget's still showing 0 on the town hall of the 4924s.
Yeah, and this is why we need to get an understanding here, because the way Realtis seems to produce these reports is that it's a blend of capital and revenue.
This is a problem.
And this is a problem. It's a problem for me, because if you just take revenue, you know what your revenue inputs are. They're your presets, and maybe one-to-one of it's an associated income, and therefore it's easy and clear to see your budget spend against that, against anything. But if you put capital loans and grants in, they haven't had a budget allocation, they've just come in as big lumps of money. And so if you then put that in the same table and you show budget allocation as 0 and money coming in $500,000, and then you use it as part of the same equation going down, it's going to skew the whole thing. Yeah. And that's why we need that special briefing on the town hall. But it's also why I've also discussed this with my colleague at HR Consultancy, James Corrigan, who is experienced in Realtis, because I want to tap into somebody at the associates who knows how that works. Because we do need, I hesitate to say you need a different way of presenting it, because I'm not a finance expert.
No, but you're right.
But I do think
we need to separate capital and revenue.
Well, I think so.
And because the problem is, it's all well and good if the numbers add up.
Yeah.
So just supposing we get a grant, let's say we get a grant to do something for £50,000, and the grant comes in for £50,000, everything's fine.
Yeah.
If that £50,000 goes over budget, because you've mixed capital and revenue, you don't necessarily know you've gone over budget, and it's not being reallocated. If your capital's over here and your revenue's over here, the grant comes into capital.
I completely agree.
And then if there's you need an overspend, that capital needs to request to revenue some money, which then has to be reallocated within the budget, and everything adds up.
Actually, the problem at the moment, I think, is it's the other way around. In you're seeing a figure of money coming in as a grant. Say, I think we saw one at 170,000, and of course the budget says 0. And if that 170,000, because it's in the same table, so it's being added up with that, if that money isn't spent, or let's say you spend 100,000 of it and you don't spend the other 73, that 73 is going to get added to your bottom line and make you think you're 73 grand better off,
Which
than
is
you
why
really
you're
are, because it's been ring fenced.
But this is why we think, that's why the previous part thought we had £133,000 underspend, when actually we don't. And it's, I mean, the numbers are so fudged at the moment, it's very difficult to understand exactly where we are within the budgeting.
There's no, all I can say at the moment is there's nothing that I've seen that would suggest to me that you're overspending against external money coming in. I think you're in good shape, but we just need a better understanding of it. So it is a priority of mine, and will be a priority of mine after we've gone through this week, because this week is very busy. That we just sort of look at that and see how it's presented, because until you know exactly where you are. But I don't, as I said, I do want to emphasise there's nothing in what I've seen so far that would suggest to me that any problems. It's just that we need to see it.
We need to understand it.
We need to
Back
understand
at the Community Unity Trust account, we have 3 accounts, of which of the first 2 there's nearly £80,000 difference, but there's no breakdown lines on where that's been spent. And then on the accounts we've got the transfer to and from the EMR account. But what's that account and what's in that? It kind of feels that we don't really
Exactly.
grasp on what account
That's
and what's in them.
the thing. What have we got in here? I know what we've got in general reserves. That's fine. But I'm not quite sure what's being allocated to what in capital, and therefore how that impacts earmark reserves. So it's just a case of understanding that.
Well, I think we need to be cautious about where we are until we have got that.
Yes.
Because I mean, you know, on Wellerbrook here, 4911, it's got a budget allocation of 1,000, but it's already up to 8,500. Now, I don't know if that's some grant funding for Wellerbrook, or whether that's coming out of reserves, or where that 8,500 or that 7,500 over the budget is coming from.
Yeah.
So
So
it's areas like that that could trip us up if we're not careful in the future.
So we discussed that one, didn't we? And from what I can establish, Wellerbrook spends have been coming from reserves, but there is a potential claim back from the Summer Valley rediscovered, right?
Yes.
So again, that's just something we need to square off and understand where that reimbursement will come from. I think the same thing goes to with the 17,490. It's spent here on the town hall in the capital. As I understand it, that's not phase 1 works. That's phase 2 preparation work. So again, that's currently being funded from the reserves, but should be reimbursable from forthcoming grant or PWRB money.
Well, it should be, but you've got, I mean, for example, if you look at the grant sheet 1177, this year, this is good news, we've received 136,000, but we don't know what those grants are allocated for, or where they've come from, or where they're going to. And that scares me a little bit.
Yeah.
I can see the money coming in, but
Yeah.
it's obviously, if it's grant money, it's already been allocated to something, so it's not money we have available.
And that's what we need to interrogate. But what I can assure you is not allowing for any of those. Yeah, taking the words to one side. Where I can see that there is a revenue budget and a revenue spend, you're okay. You're doing okay. I mean, if the money coming, if anything, the money that seems to be coming in, whether it be through grants, loans, or whatever, seems to be, in most cases, greater than the amount being spent at the moment. But I just need to understand a little more about, as you say, what it is, where it's going, what it's earmarked to. And I guess, part of that is because I'm new, and other members are new, and we just need to understand that a little bit better.
So I think we can be cautious, so I don't think it's the bottom line is showing that we're really okay.
We're okay
with
on the bottom
spending,
line.
but actually our budget lines are showing
Well,
that
the
we're
thing
overspending.
is, without that detailed budget, month by month budget to work to, you can look very well here in, where are we, month 3? But not all the payments are standard monthly payments.
No, they're not. No.
And the variations that are in the year, we could find ourselves.
We have kind of allowed those in the exercise that Joe and I did together. We allowed for where budget hasn't been spent yet, but we know it's coming. So, for instance, the PWLB loan board is the repayments for that is around 49,000. We haven't spent any yet, but we haven't said we got 48,000 spent. We know in August that's coming. So we've allowed for stuff that hasn't yet been spent, but we know is committed, that we know is coming. And I am fairly confident on the revenue side of things. On the capital side, I think it's more of a lack of understanding than any other general concern. But you're absolutely right.
I just want to have a monitoring system in place, month by month monitoring of over or under budget on every line. That's where we need to be.
Yeah.
I mean, last year's budget was for salaries, for example, was 96,000, and you ended up, having lost all the staff, ended up at 107,000. So how do you end up so far over budget when you've lost all the staff? And it's understanding these sort of numbers that will help us
I think the big
avoid the
problem.
pitfalls.
I think the big problem there was until you were actually paying still for the two other posts, the deputy town clerk and the other finance post, pretty much to the end of the financial year, because they left quite late in the financial year. So the only post you were saving was the town clerk, but you were of course employing a locum, which more than kind of wiped out that saving. The good news is, at the moment, yes, you're still paying a locum, well, hopefully, but you are currently sending the salaries of the deputy and the other finance assistant posts. So that is an underspend at the moment, and that underspend will grow until you've made those appointments. So that's actually money in the bank that you will have, because obviously you won't get somebody in the post, especially deputy town clerk, until probably a couple of months' time at least. So you're already incurring month by month savings.
Absolutely, and that is all good news. But don't forget that we're carrying over a loss from the previous budgets as well.
The loss will have been zero for reserves, I'm assuming, because that's what normally happens. So at the moment, in general reserves, at the end of the 22-23 financial year, you had around 216,871 in general reserves.
Yeah.
So
not. And what should the number be? What should the
That's pretty high. I mean, that was
the internal auditor.
Yeah.
Found that low.
No, in the internal audit report, they use audit speak. They say it's a satisfactory level of reserves, but they always use words like satisfactory. It's actually a very for a council with an under £500,000 precept, 200,000 in reserves is pretty good. For instance, when I was just to give you an example, one of the district authorities I was chief officer for, Eastbourne, had an annual budget of 13 million, and the minimum reserve figure recommended was 2 million. So that 2 million to 13 million. So the ratio of reserve to precept that you've got is much healthier than that. But you too whittle it away if the revenue budget ran out of control, which it isn't at the moment. So good.
So how do we get the accounts set up so that we view them as we're saying we want to view them? So who do we have that discussion with to get?
Yes, I'm not sure is the answer to that, because everything is off-cited.
Yeah.
Having
a conversation with whoever prepares the account.
Yes, and to be fair, when I talked to James Corrigan on this, he said, because he was town clerk at Seaford, he said it is actually normal, which I find surprising, it is actually normal at town council level for capital and revenue to be meshed together into one budget. And I find that a bit bizarre, to be perfectly honest, because capital is usually funded by stuff you haven't budgeted for, whereas revenue is funded by stuff you set according to your precepts. So
not every council's got a town hall project.
Well, there is that. Yeah, there is that.
The company that we subcontracted to,
yes,
that I can't remember the name of, isn't that a question that they can answer around?
Microshade, yeah. Well, that would be my first port of call.
Right, okay.
So I need to talk to, is it Stuart, you said?
Yeah.
At Microshade, but I also want to tap into James a little bit on this as well, because I wanted I want a third eye on this. But yeah, that's the main thing, making sense of the capital budget, and I think you should be looking at two budgets. You should be looking at revenue budget and capital programme. Personally, I think so, and the two should not mesh. You don't use revenue money for capital. It's like you don't use your salary, you don't use your savings to prop up your day-to-day earnings. So maybe I'm running too big a district council type picture to it, but you have got a major capital project. For this size of council, that is a major project. So I think it's important to see that person.
Well, with that 136,000 grants, we don't need to know if we want the capital project related to.
What is ring-fenced for? Because it's grant, I'm sure it's got some terms.
It's got some spending, or is it being used? I don't know.
Yeah, the use will be ring-fenced to whatever the grant is for. that's for sure. And of course, these streets don't give you that depth of information. So it's a bit of a learning process for us.
Well, because it's mixed in with revenue. You don't necessarily know if the actual cost of that 36,000 is 150,000, because it's not showing whether you're dipping into your revenue to try and top up the loss of grants, or grants are, particularly at the moment where costs are escalating, it's very easy for grant-funded projects to go over budgets on materials and labours and stuff. And that's why it's like it needs to be separate, so that you can at least see if you are going over budget, you can see if you're going over budget, and if needs be, you can go over to the revenue side and request some funding there if it's supported.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's always unwise to tap into your revenue budgets to prop up capital projects.
Yes.
And it's usually unlawful to do it the other way around. It's usually unlawful to use capital money for revenue spend.
Yeah.
You can get away with it with certain things, but it's not good practice to get it, because capital spend is usually ring-fenced to capital projects. As I said, I don't think there's a problem with the actuals. I do think there's a problem with the understanding and how it's presented. I think that's what we just did.
I think, as far as I know, it's straight, not a big number, but a lot of it was based on the fact we didn't know for sure certain grant applications would be successful. So we had finances in place, and we had extra money we could draw down from a loan, but then the shared prosperity guys came in with quite a recent £450,000 or so. So that obviously goes straight to the project's allocated to, which means we haven't had to dip further into the loan, for instance.
Yeah.
And of course, those things couldn't be budgeted for in advance because it wasn't certain the funding would come through. So that's why I've assumed it's always so complicated.
The problem is that the loan is showing in the accounts, and
it's based on a likelihood of all being drawn down at certain interest rates over a certain amount of time. So I think it was just it was just an estimate. So it was a reasonable estimate. Excuse me.
Okay.
So agenda item 14 is the grant applications, and we've got the Unity Meeting, Scouts and Formal Breakthrough. Gordon, you've spent some time with the Scouts. Do you want to just run through that?
Yeah, I did send an email. I did go and visit them at Town Fair, and they did apologise that they can't make it, but the chap who seems most in charge of the project is hosting a water balloon fight which finishes at 8 PM. Felt we couldn't leave the children, and the other lady is doing a scout thing tonight as well. But yeah, I did speak to them, so they're very keen to get it done this autumn, or by the end of the summer actually, because they don't think they can manage to run scout meetings over the winter again. But they have come up with an alternative proposal which is cheaper than the original one, which was to basically put a kind of cladding over the roof and insulate it at the same time, and part of that will fix all the problems. The chaps seem pretty knowledgeable about it. So that's the best I can say really. They have been fundraising quite hard. They're quite successful at Town Fair actually. It's good to see them out there. The QR codes and the like.
Do we know the deficit between the funding, what's in their reserves, and what they still need for the project?
I'm thinking it needs to be off the top of my head because I don't have numbers now, obviously not their spokesman, but I think they're looking still to raise around about the £30,000 to £40,000 mark, and as far as I know, they've got about 10.
So if we give them a grant and they don't meet that requirement, will we get that grant back? So I assume they don't have the money to do the project?
I think the likelihood problem is more. I think that they're going to do it. There's no doubt about the fact they're going to do the work. The problem I think that came from the previous time we looked at this was, when are they going to? Are they, for example, going to be doing it in this financial year or the next one?
Yeah.
Because if they're going to be doing it in the next financial year, giving £5,000 that's just going to sit in a bank account when we're short of grant funding, it's probably better to move our funding to the next commit that we're going to do it, but move it into the next financial year where we can add it into our budgets. However, it sounds like they're going to try and pull the project forward into this year, because I don't think they've got a lot of choice, which means that they would then need the funding in this financial year. What's missing is they've got to revise their financial. They've got the original quote they had was 42 to 50,000, and they had reserves available of around 17, 18,000. They've now come up with a different scheme for the work, which has drastically reduced the price, but we don't know what the shortfall is and how they're going to cover that shortfall if they're going to do it this year. So,
have they been to a bank, or do you know if they're getting any other applications?
Again, I can only speak. I can't speak with 100% certainty because I am not a spokesman for them. But as far as I know, we do have a date to get it done over the summer, towards the end of the summer, and the Scouts, as well as tapping into reserves, do have the facilities to take out. I think we can take out financing options from the Scouts umbrella thing, which again we just have to pay back. So there are avenues, which is why they're going to go ahead with the project, which obviously means, as far as I understand it, their grant policy, they can't apply retrospectively, so that looks really definitely like deliver.
I think it's, for me, I don't think, I don't have any doubt about the fact that we should be doing this. My only concern is when it's going to happen, and when do they need the funding by, and how do we make that work with our shortfall at current levels of if it has to be this year, then we have to find funds to support it, in my opinion.
But we also now don't know how much funding we're trying to find. It kind of feels like we still have a lot more questions than we do answers, and I think everyone agrees we absolutely want to support it, but we really need to know what we're supporting and how much. And I don't know that I personally feel it's unreasonable that somebody asking for quite a large amount of money, that they are able to kind of make some representation, whether that's here or a full council meeting.
Yeah. I think that was actually the motion anyway, wasn't it, in the full council?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that we can make a decision. The full council voted unanimously to invite them in to come and explain in more detail their funding issues and their timescales.
So at the moment, I understand. Sorry, please, Chair. That they've asked for 5,000. Obviously, at council, it was felt that more information was needed. Obviously, we have, and that they've been invited to come in and give that information. Obviously, they haven't been able to come in today, but Gordon's provided more information. So the decision now is whether or not the committee is satisfied that they have enough information to award that grant, or whether they want to defer it again to.
Well, what we say is the thing is, because if they're going to get it done in August, and they seem quite clear it's going to be done by August, they won't be allowed to apply for it afterwards, because that's part of our grant policy. I would say in general favour of the application of Outlook, though, is the Town Council has a grant budget, and it's very important we do. And over the 12 years the council sat, has supported many organisations and community organisations, and you know this money that we take part of the precept, we do distribute amongst the community. Now, as far as I'm aware, for instance, the Scouts haven't come for any funding previously, so you know if we are satisfied that the Scouts are a worthy cause and the roof does need to be done, we obviously have plenty of rules in place that the money will have to be spent on that project within a certain amount of time, otherwise so it's not like a risk in that sense.
I don't think anyone's disagreeing that we don't think it's a worthy cause, but I think at the moment, if we put a motion forward now, we're going to approve it. What we approve it, how much, when?
Well, I think
we don't actually know.
I think you can only approve what they've asked for.
Which we said last time, we wanted to wipe out our grant.
So, I think there's, I mean, assuming that it's going to happen, it's going to be spent within the next in the current financial year anyway, I'd suggest that you could defer it, but as I say, timescales may not suit their needs on that. The alternative is that we approve it subject to them providing the additional financial data and build schedules that we haven't got at the moment. Because what we don't know at the moment is where their finances are in terms of their shortfall. There is a shortfall, we know there's a shortfall. How are they going to finance that shortfall to make sure work does happen in this financial year? And what's the commencement date of work? I'd be quite happy that we agreed to do it, but I think we should ask for that.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have we can agree the grant in principle, subject to them?
And put the cap on it of the original £5,000 that they applied for, but assume it's probably going to be less than that if they
well,
cover.
How would you assume it's going to last?
Well, if they found an alternative option that's a lot cheaper, they not.
Oh no, I think the original quote was 42 to 50,000.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I think they're probably coming. I don't know what the final figure is, but they're probably coming down. Let's say to 30,000.
Right.
It's still they've still got a big shortfall, even if we give them 5,000.
Right, okay.
So they're going to need every
We
penny.
don't know, do we, if they have got a big shortfall, do we?
We do know
Yeah.
there's a shortfall.
But we
Not
don't
know
know
how
how
much.
Yeah, how much?
No.
Well, we can kind of tell by the amount
I
of
know.
reserves they've got and the rough amount of fundraising they've done so far.
Well, we,
So, yes, like I said
I
earlier,
don't know why they couldn't give us that figure. Or have we not
it's
asked
in the
that?
application, isn't
Is
it?
it?
No,
No.
the first one is the second, the revised one.
no,
Mm.
all we've got is the original 42 to 50,000.
So my only other concern is we are spending that against a
On that
grant.
certain
Of course, the
line.
rest of the, we've got
We've got
£2,000.
£2,000 to wait for. That's
Yeah.
it.
Things to consider.
Top
As well
up
as
the house,
the-
nice.
well, a couple of things. One was thinking moving to a system where you only put in grant applications at certain times of the year, so they're going to run out. Quite frankly, so if it becomes close to the deadline, you don't have your grant application in, it's not going to happen. Apart from emergency circumstances, another thing about council as well is that council can authorise grants whenever it feels there is a real need, and that goes above any budgeting. We're limited by statute about what we can do. And if the council has enough money to pay for something and it really thinks it must, it can.
Well, we've got to have a set of rules, and now we're bending the rules before we can agree.
No, the rules are all set down in the law. There's not any
Not
law.
law,
No,
is
they
it?
are. No, they're statute.
If we agreed a system for grant allocation,
Yeah.
we can't be bending and breaking those rules before we've even voted it through.
I know, but we're limited by the the 137 legislation, quite rightly. But I mean, for instance, if an emergency that's not happened,
Oh,
and an
emergency.
asset, an asset that we owned, or sorry, like say the town trust owned, and said for whatever reason it's going to require a major grant to avoid a catastrophe, council can, if it wants to, can consider spending money to fix that. So in a way, our grant budget is a bit shy, and we have talked about better ways we could look at our grant budget in the future, because we seem to have quite a lot on like kind of predisposed grants. Is that the best way to do it? And less on discretionary, where we have some grants we give every single year, things like the farmers market, which maybe shouldn't come out of the standard allocation. That's something we should consider in the future. So I'm just saying, even though the grant budget's mostly used up, I don't think that's
I don't think
necessarily
from where we are now, we could make a decision on that. We
Oh,
can't change.
the reason we're looking at this now is because we've had management issues with the grant system up to date.
Yeah.
It's when we've got agreements that are going out that nobody knew about, it seems. We've got duplication, we've got 3,000 to the radio station plus another 3,000 duplication going out. We've got a farmers market. I'm not saying anything shouldn't happen, but we've got a farmers market one that doesn't show in any records that it was actually ever voted for or agreed within council. We've got grants that were allocated last year and budgeted for last year that are being pushed into this financial year. So we've got a lot of historic problems with the grant system. That's why we're bringing in rules to make sure that we can actually manage it for the benefit of everyone, including the communities that need it. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. There is emergency circumstances, but generally we're creating a budget system here for grants.
Oh, totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. That's what I was just saying. The emergency thing is there for real emergencies, obviously.
But I would expect all emergency to exhaust all of the financial funding streams and actually have the scouts.
Where you can. I don't think I wasn't talking about the scouts.
No, I'm just saying. No, I appreciate that. But have they actually approached any of the funding streams that they can have, or are they going to wait for our decision to decide what they're going to do?
Okay, so I think.
Well, obviously, the Scouts Park, as I said, they were fundraising at the town fair, which was really good. It's really good to see them actually, the neckerchiefs and the rest of it. They're back on the Bob Job system. Bob Job's very difficult these days. And obviously, they've received, and I know they've received some funding from some other charities. Sparing the trust.
I think we just need the facts from the
I think
actual.
absolutely. I'm happy to propose that we accept their grant application, subject to them providing us with a fully costed process for doing it. That may be that they're going to borrow money or whatever, but just show us that you actually can create the rest of the funds around it. I mean, I'm all in favour. I mean, I donated we get an allowance as a Baines councillor every year that you can donate to things within your ward. They're in my ward, fortunately. So I gave them £1,000 last year of that towards their roof. And maybe that was essential, I don't know.
So just tying this together, to pick up all of these points, and also to recognise the fact that we don't have a meeting might need the money, what I would suggest is that we agree the award of a grant in principle, subject to further financial surety as to how they will meet shortfalls and put their finance together, and then a final decision on whether or not to issue the grant and the amount to be issued, because picking up the other point, you never know, but there's either has to come back to a meeting which we don't have till September, or this committee can agree to delegate that to me, the town clerk, in liaison with the chair.
Yeah.
Well, I think that would be
Delegate
fair. Just because of the thing is like, are you trying to say that if they fundraise and they are, I don't quite understand how the volume of the grant is going to change based on.
If they've got various other charitable grants.
Well, if they manage to get more funding in there,
If they still need the 5,000.
Right, so if they manage to get the full amount of funding, that's
At this moment, we don't actually have, we know it's going to cost a lot to do, but we don't even know what that actual figure is.
Yeah.
We know it's less than 42,000.
Can I just check as well? I think this is what it says. Well, our grant policy does have safety measures in it, doesn't it? They have to provide some sort of thing proving what they've spent the money on.
Yeah.
So it's not like they can just get the £5,000 and spend it on extra.
They have to complete a prescribed grant application to get on the list. So they will have provided some information, but clearly the council felt that they needed more in this case. It is quite a large grant in the context of the amount you have. I mean, you have 19,000 and it's 5,000, so it's quite a large chunk of your discretionary grant.
We have got coming up a discussion on the grant policy anyway. So
Sure, are you happy to propose that
yes,
motion? Does anyone have to second it?
Yeah.
Everyone in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You've got the trauma breakthrough, and I think again it's in a similar situation, but I think this was more around actually what were they going to do for the residents of Lisbon and Norton as opposed to the Scouts quite clear cut. I don't know if you've heard anything back from them at all.
I haven't contacted them. I need to apologise. I didn't contact the Scouts either, so thank you, Gordon, because you're the only person that's been in touch with the Scouts, so I didn't ask them for any information, and I haven't been, so they weren't invited to tonight's meeting. Okay.
Can I suggest that one probably could be deferred until the next ordinary meeting, and we'll invite them to the next ordinary meeting?
I think you should, because I've got quite a few questions for them on that.
Yeah.
It's interesting the trauma breakthrough, isn't it? Because they're moving to Radstock, aren't they?
Yes.
That's it.
And the thing is, Radstock and Westfield come under the area, unlike Lisbon and Norton, they have access to lottery funding through something called Big Local or something.
Yeah.
So they can apply for lottery money because they're moving into Radstock, rather than if they moved to Lisbon and Norton, they wouldn't be able to. So I'm interested to know how they got on with that side, or if they've even done one.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions, so I think, definitely defer it.
Okay. Terms of reference. So these have been sent out. There's a few amendments.
Not around the table.
Ah, thanks. Okay, I've got them here.
There you go.
I see parcel, I've got this in there.
So, section 4, there's a change of wording to encourage positive publicity for all aspects of the grant. I think the amendment's okay, and I prefer the amendment to actually remove it in its entirety. I think any publicity we can get from grants would be really good, and we're encouraging it, not ensuring it. So,
I worry if some organisations may be better or worse at it. I don't want to do a domestic finish with pressure. We definitely want to encourage them.
yeah, so we're going to change that to encourage positive publicity.
So that bit's agreed.
Was that remove it altogether?
No, to change it. Sorry, we're just going to change it rather than the amendment. So remove it. So section 6 was around whether we invited people in to present and to give a brief presentation on the group and organisation. Yeah, we could. There's two options there. We could agree either. It could stay within the F&O and invite other councillors to attend if they wanted to. My worry of bringing it into a full council meeting is, do we have time? We already rushed quite a lot. So is it better that we sit that within here and it's already done because other councillors can attend if they want to?
I don't know if the full councils necessarily short of time. We've also given a lot of work now to this committee, but the council has to organise things like the civic awards and any sort of event figure that it would be able to organise that. That's what I felt.
Actually, if you like, but to an example, if we had the Scouts and Trauma Breakthrough, they were both in a full town meeting, that could easily take half an hour time. We already on several meetings have had to agree to run the meetings. I worry how we're going to fit that in and still have meaningful discussions. Whereas actually, if it was here, where we do have a little bit more time, so people could attend.
And the other thing, is this about for people to present their grant applications? I think we're a great organisation, can you please help us? Or is it to say, you've had a grant, come and say thank you?
No, I see it as they put in a grant application for Scouts quite specific about money. Someone's going to come along, they're going to talk to us about the organisation, what benefit it brings to Midsummer Norton, and what the grant's going to be used for.
Because it just says we're successful applicants, that's what
I think they should be. I think we should be clear with applicants that it's in their interest to come along and present their request.
Oh yeah.
Because I've not been on there long enough to see many, but everyone I've seen, there's been unanswered questions that we're guessing the answer to, and if they're sat here, they could actually easily say, look, the number's this, or the date's this, or, you know.
I think you're right there, Gordon. Let's take the word successful out of that. So it's to arrange and hold a grant presentation evening where applicants will be invited to attend to give a brief presentation on the group organisation.
Yeah, I think that's
yeah.
At FNO.
Yeah, at FNO, and then obviously it's on the agenda, so anyone's welcome to come in.
Do you think it's good to do you think it's good to have several applicants assembled together, sort of Dragon's Den style?
Oh yeah.
One after the other, or is that just
yeah, no, I think that's great.
And then you kind of go, well, yes, we Jenny, no, we Jenny. So I don't know, I'm just trying to think about
it. It depends on we get. We need to be quite sensible. We've got 2 days now. We're going to open it. If we end up with 20, we're never going to have more in here at one time. We'd have to look at prioritisation system.
I think
No, I was just going to say, if you had that many applicants, you'd have a success criteria. Some would be successful, some wouldn't. You'd narrow them down. And
you would, yeah, that's absolutely true.
Like I said, hopefully we would have 20 people applying. That'd be lovely.
I mean, perhaps what I'd say quite nice is people should be encouraged to come to any meeting and say we would like to apply for grants and give us all the information, and then we'd say, great, put in your application, it will then be considered at this date. Maybe?
I think the most important thing is the public see that we're doing the job properly and transparently, and they can understand that not all grant applications are going to succeed. And if they can understand the mechanism behind allocating those grants, because it's done in an open arena like this, and they can understand that we've looked at, say, 5 applications, and we've had to make a call. We've got a limited budget, and we've prioritised them. And we've given everyone the opportunity to present themselves and their needs. I think that's probably quite healthy.
I think something along the lines of applicants will be invited to give a brief presentation on their group or organisation at the FNO committee to inform on and or support their grant applications. Then they can either take it up, which I think would be a very good idea for them to take it up, or they don't. And I think that would cover that aspect.
So there's a little bit of crossover between this and also in the grant policy of saying that people are encouraged to come and speak to us. Like I said, it's just a great idea. I think anyone on the grant is actually much better to turn up and ask for it rather than us just reading it.
Okay.
Okay, that makes more sense.
So urgent applications.
So we're on to the grants policy. I think that was everything on the terms of reference, wasn't it? That was.
So they're happy with the amendments, and we've agreed that we'll take that back to full council meeting in September with those amendments.
Thank you.
For them to consider. So then we've got the grants policy. Second half is.
Sorry, could I just ask on that? Just check up on the FNO. So the FNO committee is meeting monthly and shouldering quite a lot of the workload. That may. I'm not sure the town council used to meet every month. I think the town council used to meet only about 7 times a year.
No,
we met every month except August.
It experimented for 1 year, and because that it's almost like, I think what you're leading to is they had an economic committee which did a lot of that work, so council then went down to every other month, and that lasted for about a year or two. We changed the line again. We went through this big last time.
Okay. Just that it might be something to consider once you know, once we know how much workload the F&O and the full council are shouldering each, that there's no point having meetings just for the sake of having meetings, so it may be that that can be looked at, the schedule.
Okay, so grant policies are only urgent applications. Peter and I discussed this, and we did think that the onus needed to be on the applicant to decide the urgency, because I think we've all got very different ideas on what's urgent. So I know in an email there was outfield presented to me, I don't feel outfield will be urgent.
No, I think that was a misunderstanding. I was talking about the first outfield grant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Right, okay. And it's like, I'm not sure how that's urgent. So I think it is down to the applicant to suggest the reasons why they think it's urgent, and then for us to validate that rather than us decide the urgency.
Well, I think it's up to us to say the urgency, because otherwise all applicants would say it's urgent. But it's up to, if the point is that we have the right to say, yeah, there's urgency to this. Yeah. There's no point in us getting a grant next year after your organisation is...
Absolutely.
But we'd validate their urgency as opposed to writing it.
Yes, that's what I was going to say, exactly the same thing. It's if somebody comes in saying, we've got an application, it's terribly urgent, it cannot wait till the next meeting, will you give it to us? We need to say, tell us why you can't, and then it's for the committee to decide whether that's a valid reason for urgency. So, but it does put the onus on the applicant to state their case. You know, because different people will have all sorts of different reasons for urgency. If you try and second guess them in your policy, you'll end up with a big list.
and some of them fall through.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, Peter and I discussed this, but obviously it's a new policy, so for the general public it's not actually been out there with a few dates. So whether for this year only we put in an additional application date in October, because actually what we're saying now in our policy is the dates are closed now, you can't apply in December, which for lots of people is a bit of a shock to how the previous council used to run. So the one-off, there's an option that we would do an October date as well as a January. Having said that, after everything we've just discussed with yourself, I'm not going to put money to give anymore.
Yeah, we've only got just 2,500.
2,500. So, yeah, I'm...
Well, if you agree the grant, because you're only agreed it in principle.
Well, okay.
But yeah,
the point is that I think we've got some work to do with the accounts to understand if we've got any leeway on that 19,000 budget before we can start looking at, and I think the more time we've got to get the budgets right, because, and then once we get to that point where we have a grant meeting, hopefully we've reallocated the budgets on there and we've got more money.
I think that's key, Sean, because there are areas where we underspend based on the numbers we were looking at earlier, and if the financial situation is good, then we could potentially have more leeway for an application that came into our
things. I think a lot of underspent, to be honest.
Well, things like the Easter Fair, for instance, didn't happen. So that's 2,000.
But then we've only decided it's over the other budget.
No, but I'm just saying that's a specific thing.
I think just to give you some assurance that as I said, if you take out the incomings and outgoings of capital, your revenue position is relatively healthy. There is a net underspend at the moment. At least one of those main underspends will grow because it's the staff salary savings. You may or may not be, depending on what you then do with other budgets, but from what I can see at the moment in terms of the revenue picture, you may well have some leeway to call upon in, say, January. I wouldn't call upon it in October necessarily, it's a bit early to do that, but you may be in a position in January of having a little bit more you can put to, because you might have zeroed it by then. You could well have zeroed it with this amount. So I think you need to, I think it's a good idea to have 2 dates, October and January. If you choose to do that, it can be on the basis that, you know, if you want to spend it all in the 2,500 in October, the January situation is 0 unless you can identify any revenue environments that you can do. But I think you're not going to be in a position to know that until later in the year.
Or do we want to leave the October out because we have got the urgent?
That's the other thing you could do.
So let's leave it as January, but if someone feels they need the money before January, then we've got the clause that they can put that under an urgent application and not change the policy at all, and stick with 2 days.
Yeah, I prefer the cautious approach.
Yeah.
Because
That's
I
far
think
more sensible, less convoluted thing to what I've just suggested.
I think there
It's
is,
just translating
I mean,
for you.
I mean, within this budget that I'm looking at, I can see potential some underspends, but I can also see some red flags here for overspends. So I much prefer the cautious approach.
Okay, let's do that. And then a couple of suggestions from Gordon. So section 1.1 we've put in that the council doesn't hold the general power of competence. The reason I put that in is because if you remember at some meeting, Cheryl was quite a long answer about what general power of competence meant for us. And I didn't know if anyway, Peter Brett confirm if that actually impacts anything we do in relation to grants or not.
Not in how you deal with them at the moment. So, how you deal with them at the moment, you've got a good solid policy, you're making good solid amendments to it, and the amounts and the process are well within those sort of
So
If we move outside of that policy, that's when we might have issues.
That's right.
So we're happy to remove that?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Gordon suggests taking out the budget provision, actually detailing the amount. We could just signpost people to the budget document, and then that actually we wouldn't need to amend it every year. I think for me, we amend it every year anyway. I think it's good housekeeping.
Possibly, no, it's the software developer part of me that just thinks never repeat a number because one of them get out of sync.
But I also think the simplistic part of me is we say someone go and look at our budgets and find out how much in our grants budget. Wow, we would sat here and we can't read them.
Sure.
And that's my issue. I think we need to be clear on how much we've actually got at the beginning.
I'll be honest on this one, I think I would agree with Gordon, because keeping documents up to date is a nightmare, and if you've got the same number in 2 separate locations and they're not linked somewhere through a software, then it could. I mean, and this is today, it's not going to be the end of the world if somebody found the number was wrong in the document, but I would personally, I would prefer to reference the budget. How specifically, I don't know, but if it was refer to
Give them a cost code centre maybe.
Yeah.
So all our budgets are on cost code.
Yeah, I mean, what might be nice as well is I don't know if people necessarily always want to read these sort of fairly detailed documents, but our website should probably have some layman's terms guide to getting a grant, which might have the figure.
That's really interesting because I actually looked at Froome and Keynsham, and they've got a grants tab, and on that they have that they welcome applications from these people and the organisations, and then it says our dates of applications and closing date, and our annual amount is 19,000, for example. So it's really clear on one page.
Yeah.
So if we could add that, I think that would be great.
I mean, I know it's got back to that duplication thing a little bit, but I think our documents we've kind of found out we live deep, dark, and then.
Well, that's the other problem we've got is that, I mean, in my opinion, because I've searched, finding documents on our website is absolutely terrible. You've got to dig down through various levels.
I blame myself actually because it's.
Well, I'm going to blame you as well. But
I think to be fair, I think you're dead right. I'll quickly mention that because I have had some feedback about the document system. But you know what it's quite good for is the agendas and the minutes, because those are getting updated so regularly. But these sort of documents should have a specific place on the website and they're easy to find.
But if you weren't as involved with it, and people interest you are, I would suggest trying to find an agenda isn't the easiest thing to
her as well.
There's too many levels to go through once you get to those documents. And I think when you click onto the town council and it says Monday night is a full council meeting, you should be able to click that and see the agenda. And not have to go off to this tab, select that tab, go down to another one to find agendas, and then.
The biggest problem I had when I was first appointed, I spent the week before I came here sort of boning up on this and that. So I thought I'll win minutes, and I did it, and it was fine. But what threw me to start with was you went to the documents page and it said agendas and minutes, and you clicked on that, and you got the whole minutes. But what it then said was things like council minutes last modified August 2021, and I'm thinking, oh, that's no good. But what that meant is that was the last time anybody had done some maintenance on the page. So if you clicked on it, you actually did have the 22 and the 23. But because it had that small thing on it that said last 1.21, oh, I need the more recent ones. Where are they? You know? So there are little things. One of the things you can do in terms of your policy documents is to there are various policy documents, and the way we used to do it at other councils was actually put them all together as chapters in one online book called the Council Constitution. And you have sort of a front piece with an index, and then you have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. Chapter 1 could be your standing orders, chapter 2 could be and you only have to go to that one point and then click on the chapter, and then it comes up. They're still separate documents, so that when you need to amend, you can pull one out and amend it and then put it back in to the document. But it's quite good. I'm not a technical wizard, I don't necessarily know how that was done, but it's...
Without going on too much time, it's a subject that's close to my heart. There's lots of ways. I mean, the old way they did it is they just had this never-ending menu on the website, which went from now to the beginning of the storage. So, but there are actually some quite nice software packages.
There are, yes.
And basically they're as easy to update as Microsoft OneDrive, but they will automatically index things that become searchable. You have to spend a little bit of money on them, but they'll index through PDFs, and that makes it much better. So we didn't look at that previously, so it's something we should look at.
I think we probably need to get it, and I think we've got policy for policy's sake, and it's just...
No, I've just gone on the Constitution Review panel debates, and we've just reviewed, because the problem with constitutions is that over the years things get added on. We've just removed hundreds of pages by doing this review and made it totally easy to manage on a website. Just click on it and it links take you to wherever you need to go. And we somehow need to reach that point. But
that's essentially what I'm going. That's essentially what I'm talking about. There are also, as I said, I haven't had the opportunity to really look in detail, but there are one or two in there that are kind of called different things but saying the same things. Like you've got a document in there called Terms of Reference, but you've got another one there called Scheme of Delegation. And a lot of the stuff that's in Scheme of Delegation is in Terms of Reference. So they need a bit of housekeeping. The documents need a bit of housekeeping. And I suspect that because due to work pressures and staff absences over the last few months, that it's not high on the priority list. But there's definitely a rationalisation, there's definitely an opportunity to...
I think there's a lot of documents that are required for the gold award as well, which is quite big undertaking.
Right.
Exactly. The correct way to do these things, obviously.
So
these things, as I say, all these documents should be stored in databases, and the actual policies should be extracts. We can also display on web pages. That's how you do it.
So for now, we're going to take the budget provision out in an ISO one and find somewhere to spend on the website.
But we're going to add a sentence to add a cross-reference where they can find the budget code for that year.
Maybe we can hyperlink it, because it's going to be on the documents now. So then Gordon made some suggestions on 1.7, just some word changes, I'm happy with those. The 2.1.2 about the voluntary, I think that could just be changed to voluntary run or organisationally run for the benefit of the community. Changed. 2.6, which is the emergency grants, overvalue of £1,000 be considered at any time by the full council. And again, I think we've just agreed that as long as they state there is a rewarding improvement.
Not looking at the same requirements.
There's no issue with that. These should read, sorry Martin Plant, I think.
No, it wasn't. No, they were from Martin Payne, and I misspelled Martin's name.
On me.
Yeah.
So
not only did I misspell Martin, but I got the surname wrong as well.
Two directions.
But we all knew what
Just
so yeah, Martin, you're absolutely right with the dates. So we'll change that before it goes to the full council meeting. 2.1.5.
yeah, so they're all, that's all. whether
Yes.
all applicants should have sort of shown, particularly, I mean, we've had a request for £200 or £300 on putting the music thing on, so.
So maybe we could just add, unless the applicant is able to demonstrate to the committee's satisfaction that no other suitable funding sources are available. Or to cover that off.
I wonder, is it one of these things we have to specify specifically? Like, it's something we will take into account. If somebody comes with an application and they go, well, you might have applied in other places, but sometimes it'll be obvious that we should, and sometimes it's maybe not. I don't know if we have to specify. Yeah.
I think we need a full picture.
Yeah, absolutely. And then 2.6.
So my other point there was just really reading through that emergency thing, saying that's a good idea, but we just supported that.
Yeah, so that's already agreed, isn't it?
Okay. So is everyone happy with their amendments? And we can get that amended and sent out to the
So
council?
are you happy to leave me to input the amendments as appropriate and then send it to council in September?
Yes, it's less painful than I thought it would be. So agenda item 17 is the community trust bench in the Garden of Friendship. First time I've heard about this, but they sound really quite good, actually.
Yeah, see, at the point I'm really in favour of an extra bench, because at the moment having two diametrically opposed benches is not very conducive towards friendships. So a few extra benches in there would be really welcome.
I think I like the background of it, actually, how it's come about, how it's been designed, how it's been. I think that's really lovely.
Yeah, because I'm on the Cultural Consortium Committee where Beth, where Beth devised this project reusing these benches and involving the men's shed in it, and artists, some of whom are already linked with the town. She presented several artists to us, and we've got to choose and select, and she approached them and found out what they.
Do you think this would cover off, do you remember at the last full council meeting we had a gentleman from Baines talking about the red benches, which for me, I would really like us to work within a dementia friendly town, and the red bench wouldn't work for that. But something like this possibly would. So this could be our own take on friendship bench.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's not. The thing is, it's the artist has created designs over the whole part of the wood.
Yeah.
Thing, so there would, but
they're going to be different from any other benches.
Oh yeah.
Make them potentially.
And they need to be recognised. So I don't know. There is I'm not sure whether it's a label or something.
It doesn't say here that there is, but yeah, maybe that's something we can look at. So I think what we need to agree is the placement of the bench in the Garden of Friendship, and I'm not sure whether we need to make a decision on this now, with the Town Council agreeing to adopt or deinstall the bench after 2 years. I don't understand why we'd make that decision now, or why we wouldn't make that decision in 2 years' time.
I think it's just a case of saying that the council will have that option in 2 years' time.
So I think the only thing we need to actually agree is the location of the bench.
Have we got a precise location?
I was going to say, I think it's not where the dog is, because that's how we live.
Well, it just says.
I don't think it's asking us to tell it. It's just asking permission to do it.
It's really, I mean, it's a really nice. God, I came down, brought some students down. Just like last week, walked to various parts of town, but we ended up there. And it looks really nice.
It does. And the gates into it.
It's lovely. It's quite well used as well, actually. Okay, so do we need to vote?
Just agree if the council are all in agreement.
Yes.
Okay. The lawnmower. So the town warden has been using his own lawnmower, and apparently it was agreed that when that needed replacing, then it could be replaced through the town council. Just so he needs one he can pick up and put in his van. So out of 3 options, he's chosen mid-range lawnmower. I know nothing about lawnmowers. Does it mow the lawn?
I would say he knows what
You've got one of these
Probably
I've got the Honda one, and we do a lot of hardcore mowing at ours, so that has stood the test of time. I recognised it and thought I'd go with the Honda out of those 3.
That's the thing. I mean, this is we're looking for something in an industrial setting, not to do the back garden.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. I mean, I suspect I would probably trust Dave's judgment on this, but I would say these still look more domesticated than industrial. But if
But is there any lawns they're doing? I mean, we do fields with this thing, so I can.
Oh yeah.
It's a good point. It's not no drain. That's what you were saying. That's domestic.
But well, I think it depends on how many square metres or square miles Dave's planning on cutting with these things.
Well, you said the town park, which has got a big space. I think what you need to sit on. No,
I think we, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we, for large scale mowing, we get external mowers in. And David does a lot of the sort of tidying up, garden friendship type work. So he's not going to do the whole town park, hopefully.
I think that's the understanding, because I know we spent 11,000 last year on grass cutting. We know it's escalating this year.
Yeah.
So, assuming that you're right, this is just a bit of tidying up around the edges.
This is just for Dave's little bits and pieces. There is a separate revenue budget for the larger scale stuff with Primrose, which is currently underspent, although we haven't listed it as underspent because obviously we're still in the summer season looking at what we're going to do. So this is very much for the small scale stuff. Dave assures us that that's...
So is this going to come out of the town environment, equipment and maintenance budget?
Should it have not been allocated to 4036 furniture and equipment projects?
Right, I haven't memorised your budgets yet.
I've got it written down.
So we've got £887 left of that budget for the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's what it will come out of. 4036, I suspect. Furniture and equipment.
Okay.
And then 4035 when it gets to flat time.
And I guess it runs today before the trash is now.
Yeah.
So that's a really logical question actually. Is this now going to be town council property or is it going to be his?
No, it's town council.
Well, they seem very nice.
I mean, basically, first of all, we have no choice.
No,
We've got
absolutely.
to supply the equipment to do the job. Secondly, it's not really for us to choose between the three options. It's for Dave to choose the one that he prefers.
I think so.
Yeah, which is done.
So
And the costs are very similar between the three.
Because what we're being asked to do now, I don't think there's anything to argue about.
Can we
really, is there?
consider some town council branding?
No.
It is very, not that I was for Arrowhead here, but it is interesting that in one of my councils we had a whole team called Neighbourhood First that did all the mowing and all the clearing passageways, and every single vehicle they had Eastbourne Borough Council Neighbourhood First branding on it. But we are talking about vans, we're not talking about lawnmowers. So.
Could you imagine? Okay, so is everyone happy that Dave can purchase his mid-range mower?
Yes.
That keeps him happy. Okay, so agenda item 19 is the mining figures. So consider whether to complete the asset transfer of the two mining figures from the Miners Welfare Trust to ourselves, and whether to add the two figures to the town council insurance. I love the figures, I love the heritage of them. I've no issue with adding them to town council insurance. When Peter and I spoke about a figure, but we thought it would be really nominal.
It would be nominal, yeah. But
I'm not happy to take on the fact that if they got damaged, that that's our responsibility.
Well, what? I mean, first of all, my understanding is that they're on Bain's property.
Yeah, they are, and they're owned by the miners.
Which, in any type of insurance claim, adds some confusion into the equation. Depending on what type of damage we're talking about, because it may not be, it may be damage to both the silhouette and the groundworks or whatever. So it does add some confusion into how you insure something that's not within your own control in terms of land.
And I don't know where the breakdown's been in Bain's taking on the insurance fees.
I think, and Joe will correct me if I'm wrong, but I must admit, I consider this to be a bit unusual that A, we don't own the statues, and B, we don't own the land that they're being put on. The logic would be for either the mines organisation to insure and maintain, or for Baines to insure and maintain. But as I understand it, for whatever reason, and I don't speculate, our contacts from the miners, the main statesman for the miners. simply does not want to deal with veins and wants to deal with us instead. But it would be, it's not impossible, and I don't think the insurance costs will be that high. There would be complications. I think there is a chance of regular vandalism, and then the onus is on us to resolve that quickly. It's not so much about getting the money for it, but it's about being able to respond quickly to vandalism. But given that it's owned by a third party and being placed on land owned by another authority, I do struggle a little bit with the logic of us.
So can I ask, so for example, the wagon, the old pit wagon, the fire display, who's responsible for that in terms of insurance? Because that's on Baines property, and it's a very similar scenario. You have a feature there that I don't know if Baines look after it or maintain it or insure it.
Yeah.
But this is it Baines?
Yeah.
So why Baines? Is it purely because there's that relationship breaks down and we haven't approached Baines?
Baines haven't been approached by the Mining Association. Just to add a bit more detail, I did explain where we could put the miners on our land, so that they would become an asset on our own land, that we would then ensure that the mining, it's not a mining association, is it? Sorry, it's that. But that they were the preferred sites. So
would it be unreasonable to go back to the say, okay, so if you want one of these sites, you need to approach Baines and get them insured. If you don't want to approach Baines, then you need to put a site where Joe's recommended that would be on our side.
Are we aware of any issues with the other ones that have been placed around?
They've not been vandalised.
No, I know that.
our soldier has been vandalised several times. It's been folded in half. But nearly double figures, I would have thought, by now. Dave's removed the soldier outside of it, and
is it made of the same material?
it's a silhouette without.
Oh, I'd say, yeah.
With
It's not an infill.
No, it's an outline. It's an outline rather than
sturdy.
So possibly, yeah.
And a lot of the other ones are in places that you wouldn't necessarily walk, but you drive.
On the main road, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they won't all be insured.
Whereas these ones, in the Hollies, ones proposed to go in there.
Yes, that was news to me recently, because the original application last year was for one mining figure on the corner of Silver Street and South Road. So, but it was there are now two that they'd like to put in some.
So is anyone agree we go back and suggest they contact Baines if that's what they want them?
Well, the only thing I'm reading into it is they're saying that we consider basically the gift asset transfer of these two figures, and then the whole thing becomes the town council's issue,
Well, I think
which is really what we're deciding, isn't it? Well, then it would be, unlike them having to go to Baines, we would have to go to Baines, which I think may be fair enough, but I think that's what we're kind of being asked. We say, we'd like to take a gift of two figures, and then we'll have to find a place to put it. Dealing with Baines, it seems like maybe the Miners Welfare Trust, for whatever reason, don't want to deal with Baines, so they're saying, town council, would you take them for us and deal with Baines, which we could do.
Well, we can, but I say from an insurance point of view, there are some complications with allocating insurance to property that's not on our property and not within our control or management.
But wouldn't that be the same for the Miners Welfare Trust? Is that not the same problem for them?
Well, I guess we need to understand what's the agreement they've got with Baines in terms of placing them there.
They haven't met with Baines. I met with Stefan from Highways, and Martin Thatcher came along as well, and Stefan checked both sites, approved both sites, didn't require any more paperwork to have or information to have both mines put in those sites. So Highways are happy, you don't need to contact them anymore, we don't need any planning permission, and as a we, I mean whoever's putting the statues there. So,
But Stefan, sorry.
I'm just wondering who's going to actually put them in the ground.
I guess
Is that going to be left to us to do?
No.
But it would be if they're asking us to do an asset transfer, Gordon's right, because they're basically saying, hey, oh, there's a gift, there's 2 miners, now you need to put them in the ground, now you need to insure them.
I'm sure there's some Gordon saying we do it before we cite them, but they're saying they'll cite them and
I added a line because I did get an email.
If Stefan Chivers and Beans are happy,
I think
well, I was going to say, it sounds like a very relatively small cost and a small risk, and it sounds like something I don't think would be particularly. I don't see the problem with us doing it.
well, Stefan's highways, so he will have no involvement in assuring or insuring property. He's worried that it's public safety and highways issues, not who's going to deal with the problem if they get vandalised.
Right. Well, I thought that would come down to the insurance that we're willing to compete, which we think would be relatively small.
Well,
that's a small risk.
do we have any number on what it would cost us to have our insurance?
Do we want to defer it until we've got some figures?
It would be interesting to understand, as I say, who's responsible for the cars there, because it would make sense that that's all covered in the same policy. It's part of the same attraction, if you like. But I don't know. It certainly doesn't sound like it's the town council that insure that.
Well, it's been.
It's a very what's being requested is a very clumsy would be a very clumsy thing.
Yeah.
Because as I said, you've got 3 parties involved. You've got the miners group, you've got land ownership, which is Baines, and then you've got the insurance, this would be us. If I was want to advise you as a committee, I tend to lean with Gemma on this, in that I think we need to go back and give them 2 potential options. Is that one, if they want to cite those statues on those points of Baines land, then sorry, they need to approach Baines around maintenance.
We can certainly assist them with that process.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm quite happy to assist them with contacting Baines, but we can talk to Baines.
But we do have the alternative, as I understand it, Joe, of sites that we own that they haven't chosen. If they were prepared to put them on those sites, we would agree to the asset transfer directly with them. And I think that's a reasonable position.
Can you remember what we resolved last time this came in front of council? Because we resolved
it.
What was it we agreed to do?
To grant permission for the installation of a metal silhouette of a miner in the town on the corner of Silver Street and South Road by the mining cart. So
we've already kind of given that.
Yeah.
But in the email I wrote to Mr. Drury, I said it was in. I said that they needed the permission from Baines.
Right. Okay. So we kind of agreed it, but we didn't get any further with the Baines permission. So
I think that at that time it was, and again, Joe will correct me if I'm wrong, I wasn't around at that time, but it was 1 statue rather than 2, and nobody was mentioning insurance and maintenance.
Okay.
I think that's where it's moved.
I mean, everyone wants to support what they're doing. We all support it, 100%. The insurance is a bit of a side issue which has a complication about it, and it has to be managed correctly. Otherwise, it's of no use to anyone. If it ever came to the point of a claim, it just wouldn't stand up to the scrutiny that insurance processes use. So we need to make sure it's right. The ideal solution is Baines, so I think that's where we need to start. And if we don't get into with Baines, then of course we can revisit it ourselves.
Okay.
But the logical way to start this process is to talk to Baines about adding it to their existing.
And you're happy to talk to Sean?
Absolutely.
So
Can we not give them another option whereby we say to them, have it on our land, we'll insure it because it will be nominal and it will go through probably a lot quicker than going through Baines and working out who the
I think
car
that
I think
was
they've
the
had that.
options.
They've had
No,
that
they don't.
several
No, they
times.
We can
But
restate that. We can restate that option.
And to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest, I mean, if we're looking at insurance in terms of vandalism rather than public liability, if something were to happen to one of these, we'd probably, I doubt we'd be going down the insurance claim route anyway. You'd probably be looking at how we could resolve it without that process.
Yes.
So I think the other way is go down that route anyway.
Can we respond to them positively then? So yeah, we're in favour, but we still need to.
And Sean's happy to.
Yeah, Sean has made it big.
If Mo wants to call me, that's why I know Mo. If he's more than happy. I tried to help him with another project up the road by the train station, something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So agenda item 20.
Agenda, can I just thought about fairly funny situation? Well, I'll have to turn the thing off. Unfortunately,